Welcome to the podcast, Babbie and Dr. Debbie.
Thank you. We're excited to be here today with you.
Really excited to have you guys. So today we have Dr. Debbie and Babbie on in the built environment, two of the top experts in property management. Would you guys like to introduce yourselves?
Babbie, you go first because I could
Okay.
go on and on. So go, Babbie.
Well, I'm more simplistic. I am Babbie Jaco, and I am from South Carolina. And I started my career in 1984, and I just retired. So I'm fresh on the retirement trail with what I would say is just the most fantastic career in property management, and one that somebody said to me, wow, how lucky that you are grieving at retirement rather than celebrating retirement. So I hope that we can deliver that news to your audience today about really how fantastic this career is.
Yes, and thank you, Jacob, for inviting us. I'm Dr. Debbie Phillips. Like Babbie, I started, Babbie's got 2 years on me. I started in 1986, and I tell everybody, the two most important days of your life is the day you were born and the day you discovered why. I've been in this industry 34 something years, and I just want to encourage all of you that are listening to this program today to think about how to use your strengths in the real estate industry. Specifically today, we're going to be talking about property management. But if you go on the website, careersbuildingcommunities.org, you will see more than 50 career opportunities, tracks for you to explore in the built environment. So as we go through our presentation today, it's not necessarily about all the things that we say. Our goal is to prompt you in discovering how you can use your strengths in the most rewarding career on the planet.
Love it. Let's get started. So just for our audience's context, Babbie and Dr. Debbie came very prepared. So they already have the topic picked out. It's building a top-notch property management career. And I met Babbie at the IRM Global Summit. We were in Dallas and we got on the same bus early in the morning to go to a service project. And then she said, "You have to meet Dr. Debbie while you're here." So
Yes,
that's
thank
how
you,
we met.
Jacob, for net weaving all of us together today. I use that term, not networking. Networking is really transactional. Net weaving is transformational. Like we all help each other, and that's one of the things that I want to encourage our audience to think about today is how are we going to build a strong circle of influencers. And so that's part of what we're going to talk about today.
Love it. So the first segment of our podcast is the property management landscape. So, Babbie, could you give us an overview of this industry?
Well, I could go on all day. So I'll keep it concise. There's just different categories. And why those are important today is to really understand that each one of these bring a unique flavor to it requires different skills, different structures of a company. And for example, let's just say commercial, for example, which is typically office spaces, warehouses, medical buildings, data centers, parking garages. I mean, you think about it, everything needs management. That might be a different type of day-to-day cadence in your career than, say, multifamily housing, where at 2 a.m. you have emergencies. And so you may be more on point than in a different segment of asset management. There's this category of residential properties where you find your single family, condominiums, HOAs, and for me, my passion, affordable housing. You've got retail properties and shopping centers and shopping malls. All of that's a different niche. Specialized areas include hospitality, student housing. I've managed a special niche called housing for older persons, which is not elderly housing. It is 55 and older. And that's interesting. Think about assisted living, nursing home management. And then today it's very, very popular to have a mixed use development, which is where you can live, shop, play, work, everything all in the same building, right? Which I think you find more in urban areas. So with that being said, let's just say I'm starting out my career and I am just struggling with the speed of that residential management because it's coming at you all day long and things happen during the night or the changes are fast. But I really like the real estate industry. I may look at something a little bit different. Maybe the cadence in shopping center management could be different. I think that's what was pretty cool. And every one of these real estate asset management types is the need for special skills. And the companies are set up differently. For example, in affordable housing, you find that we have a huge investment made in compliance. So if you are a detailed oriented, really can check a box and you love that audit feature, you would love to be part of that compliance team where I will tell you millions of dollars are in your hands to not make a mistake. We had a joke at our company that said, heavy is the crown the person who wears that crown of the compliance director, because they must be right every single time over years and years and years to protect those assets for the investors. So every type of asset is going to have just different features, and it's just the beauty of this career journey.
Love that. Thank you for sharing. And it does seem like there are, maybe I'm wrong on this, but that there are more laws around the residential property type than the commercial because it's about people and where they're living.
That really developed over time. When I first started in South Carolina, we did not even have a landlord-tenant act.
Wow.
In fact, my boss, Ken Wee, was on the committee that wrote that for South Carolina. So different rules and laws, standards came about because of the industry action. And partly, IREM helped that along the way as well.
I love that. Yeah, I was able to attend the IRM Advocacy Impact Day in DC while I was out there. And that was really neat to be a part of, just to be able to meet. We didn't meet with any like senators or Congress people exactly, but with their aides. And it was really neat to see, yeah, the advocacy that the IRM participates in that way. Okay, going on to segment 2, the passion behind the profession. This is really good. This was written by Babbie, so these are really good words. Your passion for property management is inspiring and contagious. I often see your LinkedIn posts where you recognize and encourage professionals, whether on planes, trains, or at conferences. Could you share a story with us that highlights your journey, Dr. Debbie?
Well, my journey has been so rewarding, and thank you for that, intro about that. One thing that I think that we need to think about, one of my mentors said, pick a career that doesn't have an expiration date.
Mhm.
And we know that Gen Z will have as many as 13 or more different career opportunities and options as they, explore and they are on their career journey. But when you think about a career that doesn't have an expiration date, housing is essential to life. The founder of Chick-fil-A, Truett Cathy, he said, food is essential to life, let it be good. I think about housing is essential to life. Let it be good.
Mhm.
And Babbie has spent her career in, attracting people to affordable housing specifically. But when you think about a career in real estate and specifically in property management, I have had the opportunity to work on affordable housing, market rate communities. My master's was actually in seniors housing. So I think one of the things that I'd encourage your audience to think about is start where you are. Think about what do you enjoy doing? Exactly like Babbie said, affordable housing is you have to have a heart. Number one, you have to have a heart for service, but you also have to be very detail oriented. In property management, I think it was the National Multifamily Housing Council that predicts between now and 2032, our industry is going to need 4.3 million new units just to fill the demand. So we have a huge demand for apartments, right? Because we know interest rates still, prohibit some from buying a house, and home ownership. For every 1% of decline in home ownership, that creates the need for 1 million new units. So I don't give you all those statistics to overwhelm you. I give you those statistics to say there's tremendous opportunity for anyone who wants a career in property management. I also want to encourage you to think about your strengths. Babbie and I talk about this all the time. There's the Strength Finders assessment through Gallup. I want you to take the DISC profile. I want you to take the Myers-Briggs, the Enneagram, the Judgment Index. Take those assessments so that you can just what I call verify or, compare what you think your strengths are to what the assessment says. And so then once you find your strengths, then you can think about, am I better on a leasing team? Do I like sales? Do I like accounting? Do I like, maintenance and service? Do I like to be outside? Do I like to fix things, repair things? So I talk about that in terms of our journey to think about what is your strengths and how can you apply those strengths. And for me in my personal journey, you can tell I love to talk, I love to sell, I love to inspire, I love to create, and I love to win. and
Mhm.
and I don't mean that in a my way or the highway type of winning. I love to increase market share. I love to take a property or an asset and find the best audience to pay us the highest price so that we can get returns for our owners. So Babbie likes to make her owners money too. And she's just, a champion at that as well. But I always tell people when you're thinking about your career, spend time developing your strengths. We all have weaknesses. We all have areas that we're not great at. And that really is the importance of working in teams. There's no I in teamwork. We all have strengths, but Babbie finds immense joy in her work. Her work is her calling. My work is my calling. There's a difference between a job, a career, and a calling. I want our listeners today, and they may not know because they may just be, discovering this industry. But what has served Babbie for almost 40 years and me, 38 or 40 years, it's because we enjoy helping others be successful. So I think that's a lot of it.
I love that. Yeah, it does seem like it's a really service focused industry. And I
It
think that
is.
is a really fulfilling part of it. Okay. Who or what impacted your decision to devote your career to the property management field and then expand it towards education, Dr. Debbie?
Well, I have had so many wonderful mentors, but a guy by the name of George Lane, he passed away several years ago. He founded the Lane Company, and they were one of the true leaders in affordable and conventional housing, property management, fee management. But George always said, let the need define itself.
Hmm.
And that was such great wisdom for me because there is a need for professional property management. There is a need for curriculum around property management. So I was in the industry for a long time. And then 2004, George and others said, we need a program very similar to Virginia Tech, very similar to Ball State. And so I was one of the first ones that got to create that program at the University of Georgia and then on at Georgia Tech. And now, if you look, there's about 30 programs in colleges that have some concentration of property management. Certainly, there are real estate track programs, and that's wonderful, but there's emphasis in property management. And so through that, our students can get involved in real estate student organizations. I mean, Jacob, that's what I love about you. You're so hungry, you're so eager. You know, you and I met through your sustainability project with IREM. And so I think that when you think about shifting from for me personally, shifting from being a practitioner to an educator, I get to do a lot of it through my consulting, but there's nothing that lights me up more than being in a classroom. Nothing. That's my favorite. If you ask me if I could only do one thing, that would be it. That would be teaching.
I love that. Thank you for sharing. Okay, Babbie, you've spent 40 years in affordable housing. What drew you to this sector and why is affordable housing important?
I wish, Jacob, that I could tell you that I had a plan and that I had thought about this industry and I said, oh, my heart, but I didn't. I was a young graduate. I was 22 years old. I was a little bored in my first job right out of college, and I got a phone call from a stranger, somebody that I had helped at the bank, and said, I've got a friend who's starting a business. I think this is where you'll retire. That was
Wow.
Steve Wade, who ended up working with me 30 years. And sure enough, that's where I retired. So I'm a product of growing where I was planted. I was the third employee hired, and there were a lot of I had to learn through banking mistakes. And this is why I love getting in front of a group, Dr. Debbie, because then I hopefully can make light and fun of the mistakes that I've made. You know, if I can tell somebody those, then maybe the vulnerability is all there, and then people are more comfortable with saying, "Well, I did that too." So I didn't seek out affordable housing. When I first started, we were managing in our company every type, every asset type virtually. And we realized that we needed to specialize. And we were developing the demand was high. We developed our own. And then when the tax reform changed in 86, it became so complex that we became just very, very good at it. The speed of this profession is what I enjoyed. And I was able to migrate from job to job to job, being in such a small company at the time until I knew where it helped to, as Debbie said, um, develop my strengths rather than to focus on my weaknesses. And those strengths were being able to multitask, being able to learn quickly, soak it up. And I had a willing mentor who taught me everything. And I didn't wait for him to teach me. I asked questions all the time. And I think that is the key, but why is affordable housing so important? I think Dr. Debbie said it earlier. I can't think of anything more important. It's not just housing. It is housing for every sector you can imagine. It is your firefighters, your teachers, your service workers. You are providing great service. For us, our affordable housing was the center of our communities in the rural South. Everything happened in our community rooms. That's where we had the community's COVID vaccine clinics were in our properties. We hired locally. So those local managers were well known. They knew everybody that lived there, right? The culture was special. But in affordable housing, particularly in the rural areas where rural America can get ignored from some of the big splashes out there in the news, it's vast and it's needed. And it's also important from the standpoint of housing instability and what that does to people. When I was a teenager, my father died. And prior to that, we were a middle class family. I had everything I needed, not everything I wanted, but certainly everything I needed. And then we were poor. And by the end of the month, my family, we were hungry. Now, we lived in a good house, but it was a struggle for my mother, as she called it, to pay the taxes on terror. And I worried about those conversations. And when you think about children and what happens if they don't have housing stability, what happens to them in school if they have to move or they move often, or the fear, as I had, of what was coming next. If the acknowledgement, would I still be here? Would this still be my home next week? I had to look back on this, Jacob, to really realize that what I did for a career was so impactful. I didn't see it while I was in the middle of it. I mean, there were moments where I saw it, but the importance of affordable housing, I can't state it enough. I could talk all day about it, but I hope that gives a little bit of light into it's not what people think of, when they say, oh, affordable housing. I can tell you that our affordable housing was the prettiest properties in town, not just because of all the compliance we had to do for it and the fear of losing those tax credits if we didn't keep it immaculately maintained. But we were proud. We were very proud of what we owned, and our residents were very proud, and they helped us keep everything top notch.
Love that. Yeah, it seems like there isn't a sector of the industry that would be more important than affordable housing. Yeah. How does managing affordable housing differ from managing other property management assets? Could you share a story about your career that highlights affordable housing's impact on residents and local communities?
Well, those are almost two really different questions, okay? But I'm going to tell you that it differs in the fact that there is fear when you're in charge of an affordable housing management operation, the fear of making a mistake. For example, you're doing a lease up of a 100-unit building, okay, where everything counts for what the IRS considers to be a BIN number, which is how all the tax credits are allocated. And if you make one error and move somebody in the beginning that is not eligible, say you missed the projected overtime and somebody was over the income limit, you moved them in, and it was discovered, you could have cost your investors a tremendous amount of money. So we have to be right all the time. And that affordability with programs, it changes all the time. It's very intense. and the pressure to get leased up, to deliver those credits is high. So you just really have to be very careful. You have to surround yourself with people who care about the quality of their work. You have to train them constantly. So that's what makes it very different. Now, I want to share a story. This was later in my career. We were doing a lease up in Decatur, Georgia, a little more urban than what our company had been doing for so long. And I was in Decatur, Georgia, and we were struggling with not could we lease this up? I mean, we could have leased it up on day one, and we were famous for that. We were having trouble with the demand was so intense. Our staff was overwhelmed. We had 400 applications on day one for 60 units. 400 credible applications. So I do what I do best. I drive down, I'm going to help, right? And the manager said, well, Babbie, why don't you do this move in for us? And so she handed me the keys to the unit, and I walk the new resident over to inspect the brand new, beautiful apartment in Decatur. And I'm walking with her, and she is just filled with joy. She is filled with joy. And we walked into the apartment, and she looked around and she just cried. She's sobbing in front of me, and I'm, trying to be professional. I'm not right here playing the role of that leasing agent, moving her in. And she tells me her story, and her story is that she is homeless. And she had been in a very, very good paying job. She had a very professional job. She was well educated. She had been in that job for 20 years. And then she was diagnosed with breast cancer. And she was extremely sick. She was so sick, she could not continue working. And this went on for a long time. And she ended up she lost the job. And she found herself unable to pay the rent and was homeless, and had been homeless for 2 years. And was just staying on the couch of one friend to the next friend. Okay. And she was moving off of her friend's sofa into this beautiful apartment that I had the privilege of giving her those keys to. And I realized, I said, this could have been any of us. This could have happened to any of us. And that's when I said, gosh, what we do, it really is important. It matters. And I would say, Jacob, it was 30 years of my career when I had that moment. Yeah.
I love that. Thank you for sharing. Going to go on to segment 3 now. Breaking barriers in leadership and property management. This is a question for both of you. You both built your careers in an era when women in leadership roles weren't as common as they are today. What challenges did you face, and how did you overcome them? And then the second part is, what advice do you have for young people aspiring to leadership roles today?
You go, Babbie.
I guess, okay, I'll go. I was saying, now this might be silly. My biggest hurdle was kind of what we would call the girl thing. At the time, I think it was harder probably to advance within the company as the company was growing than it would have been had I changed companies, maybe. And I remember going, as I got advanced, silly, but I didn't get invited to lunch anymore. And I remember being upset about it. And Ken said to me, now, Babbie, you're just going to have to make a decision. Because I was really upset that I didn't get invited to go to lunch with my girlfriends. And he said, you got to make a decision. Are you going to be one of the girls? Or are you going to go to the executive washroom? Suck it up is what he did. That was back then. Things are so different now. And we have this net weaving of Dr. Debbie. First time I've ever heard it. I love and I steal her terms and reuse her terms all the time.
Mhm.
But I've just gotten involved in Women in Affordable Housing Network. And that started because two women in Georgia got together for coffee and said, let's talk about affordable housing and the problems that we're facing and how are you solving these problems. And next thing you know, they invite two more women that had coffee together. And now you have this amazing network of women in affordable housing. And honestly, Jacob, we feel like we're ruling the world these days. We are in leadership. We're breaking the glass ceilings of the 80s and 90s. I was telling people at work one time, I said our policy manual, when I first started, said women must wear dresses and high heels and hose to work. We had, and they look at me like I'm crazy. But things are different today, and the opportunities for women, there is no glass ceiling to break anymore. I think that it is there, that we have done remarkably well as a group. And my advice would be to surround yourself with people who encourage you, and people who you draw energy from, your type of energy. My type of energy is Dr. Debbie energy. That might wear, my sister told me sometimes my energy wears her out. So people have different sources of what fulfills them. And my advice would be to net weave with those that can help you best, and to stick with the profession, stick with things like IRM, do it the right way and don't take the shortcuts.
And my story is a little different, but I am a very sales oriented. I tend to gravitate to the marketing, to the promotion of our business, and I got some really direct coaching one day, and I was in a board meeting, and a lot of gray suits were in there, and I got overly excited about the marketing campaign. And I told them all about what we were doing with the human directionals and the, billboards and the balloons and all of that. And I ran out of time giving my presentation because I got too excited. And so on the way home to the airport, my dear boss, then I call him a leader. You never want to work for a boss, you always want to work for a leader. So my leader says, Debbie, I want to give you a little piece of advice. And I thought, oh gosh, here it comes. And he said, you got to know your audience. He said that marketing campaign was probably $30,000 or $40,000, but we made the owner $240,000 because we got that property leased up. And he said, you missed a great opportunity to tell the owner what the percentage of return was on their investment. And he said, you've got to know your audience. And he said, at the end of the day, marketing is an expense. He said, we want to know how much value did you create? And in IRM, we talk about Uncle Irv, income divided by the cap rate equals the value. And so I was thankful, Jacob, that he cared enough about my success, number one, to coach. Number two, I never walked into another meeting that I didn't focus on the financials first. And I want everyone that's listening to this presentation today to understand your audience. What do you want them to know? What do you want them to feel? And what do you want them to do? I wanted them to invest more of their money with us. I wanted them to feel that they had the best property management team working for them. And so it's really important that we learn as leaders how to speak to our audiences and what are they really looking for us to do for them. So that was just a learning opportunity that I had. And I tell women all the time, if you don't understand the financials, if you are not familiar with those terms, you get to know them. And IREM offers, as you know, some of the best, education around financials and property management. But you got to learn those hard things. And I tell women all the time, don't be afraid to do the heavy lifting.
I love that. Thank you for sharing. I remember back when we met, I think the first time you told me to always think about how each thing impacts net operating income, NOI. Think about, like, always remember that, and that's stuck with me. So thanks for that advice.
Oh, see, now that's what makes Babbie and I happy, is that when we can teach something and you still remember it. So Jacob, you just made my day.
I'm glad. Okay, so segment 4 is training, mentorship, and industry growth. This is for Dr. Debbie. Training and education in property management have evolved significantly. Can you share insights on today's training opportunities?
Well, there's so many training opportunities. I talk about formal training. We just covered a minute ago. You can actually get a degree in property management. The second type of training is around certifications, industry certifications through NAMA, through IREM, through NAA. And then there's informal training, there's self-guided training, there's on-demand learning and those kind of things. There's professional associations, but there's no substitute for job shadowing. There's no substitute for the one-on-one opportunities to sit with somebody like you're doing right now with us, to identify a thought leader, to really get on their calendar. And there's a lot of ways to create that mentor mentee relationship, and I think Babbie's going to talk about that in a second. But I encourage everybody, do your homework, ask critical questions, be curious, and be considerate of somebody's time when you're asking them to invest in you. You have to have some skin in the game. And I was talking to someone the other day and they wanted me to help them, and I was just glad to do it. But I realized real quick that they didn't do their homework. And so I had to politely and directly tell them that once you do your part, I'll meet you there. But you can't ask people to do the work for you. And so that's something that I really want our listeners to understand, is that when you're asking for coaching, when you're asking for mentoring, show up and be prepared. But there's formal and informal types of education, and I like to use it. I use the term learning and development. You can train a dog. People want to learn. So, let's think about what learning and development looks like for our professional careers.
Love that. Um, can you talk to us a little bit about how people can use IREM in that process of learning and development?
Oh, absolutely. If we have a student that's listening today, you get a free student membership through IREM. And there's many other associations that provide student memberships, opportunities, and that kind of thing. But I tell everybody, just being on a roster is not enough. You can be a member. Jacob, I remember specifically, you show up, you sit on the front row, you ask very good questions, and you take the time to meet people. So if our listeners are thinking about being an IREM member, I want you to also think about membership is not enough. You've got to attend those chapter luncheons. You've got to do the property tours. You've got to make create relationships that are meaningful. So there's plenty of ways. I encourage everybody to go on the IREM website. But if you're listening to this program today, there's always a chapter in your city or close to you that you can attend. And I know our IREM members love students, so somebody will treat you to a lunch ticket, I'm sure.
I love that. Yeah, one of the most fulfilling parts for me of being involved in IREM has been being a part of the student academic outreach committee with IREM Utah. We have a great leader, Benson Richardson. He's been over that committee for the past few years, I think. And the student membership has increased a ton, across universities. We have members from new universities that we hadn't had before, and it's been really neat to see that.
Sure.
Okay. Need to pull this up. This is for Babbie. Mentorship is a recurring theme in your career. Can you share a defining mentee experience that shaped you?
Well, Ken Wheat was like a coach. He played football. Lou Holtz recruited him when he was a high school student at Georgia Military College. Yeah, they had a prep school. And I have my favorite book. I don't know if you can see, Winning Every Day by Lou Holtz. And it's inscribed to me from Coach Lou. And he wrote me a very special, encouraging note. And whenever I get discouraged or felt like I wasn't living up to what I should be or do, or a hard decision, this was invaluable to me. The chapters in here are things that just will change your life. So I cannot emphasize this enough. And you know what, we're talking about bigger, more corporate type leadership things, but really in property management, for me, the mentorship was about Ken Wheat's training of me in person by me being in his car, us riding to the properties, him walking me through everything for the bugs that are in the light that cannot be there, that are over that little porch, those bugs should not be, and how to have what the expectations were. You inspect what you expect, and the rubber meets the road on site all of the time. When I was cleaning out my desk at year end, I had kept notes from people over the years, and I found a note where I had mentored a young lady. Her name is Haley. And I remember her as a beautiful young girl with red hair. And she was struggling with this work balance thing with 2 small children at home and pressure from her family. And she had resigned her position and wrote me a beautiful note and talked about the struggle. And she said in her note, she said, "I will never forget the day that, in Babbie style, you whizzed into my property, you came into the office, and there I was the first time meeting you. And you said, 'Haley, today I'm going to teach you how to properly greet someone.'" Now, I did not remember this, but this was in her note. And she was thanking me for that gift because she didn't know how to greet. She sat there at her desk and smiled up at me very sweetly. But I taught her how to stand up, look me in the eye, shake my hand with zest, and not, let me just touch your fingertips. And she said that moment made a difference for her in her life, that became a skill that she could use. Again, I go back to the influencer. When I read this book so many times, one of the chapters is, do you care about me? And can I trust you? And that, again, I feel like, looking back again, you don't really know it at the time, is that I helped Haley in a way that Ken Wheat helped me. And that was on site where it really mattered, and in teaching what mattered to our clients. And that was the condition of their properties and how we present them to others.
I love that. Yeah, for me, being mentored, like having that mentorship relationship has been one of the most fulfilling parts of my career so far. Yeah.
Awesome.
Segment 5 is industry concerns. So for Babbie, in your view, what is the single most pressing concern of the industry today?
Hands down, what would keep me awake and did was the um, aging out of our maintenance technicians and not having a pool of them coming into the industry. When I took a census at my company, and the average age was well into the 60s of our maintenance techs. Now, you can go to technical school and you can learn HVAC and you can learn electricity, and they're segmented. And we tried here in South Carolina to talk to our technical schools. We met with them about starting an apartment maintenance program.
Mm.
And it was so expensive that they just said, we can't do this. What is the industry going to do? And how is this industry going to respond? Because the cost of maintenance will skyrocket when you lose that important jack of all trades, the one who can diagnose that HVAC, know that the element, the $30 element needs to be replaced in the water heater versus the $400 water heater, and can paint the apartment at the same time. You know, having someone who can do all of that. In rural housing, our communities are small units, as small as 12 units, right? So that person does everything. I think that is a critical problem facing us, not only at this time, but it is coming.
Thank you for sharing. For Dr. Debbie, how can the industry address Babbie's concerns regarding the aging out of the technical workforce?
Well, I think it's, it's a very challenging situation, but I think as owners and operators, we have to be extremely innovative. You have to, create your rainy day fund. What does that mean? You've got to work hard to attract new talent so that that knowledge transfer takes place. We've got to look at partnering not only, as Babbie said, with technical schools, but our construction pathways in high schools. And so I think you have to have a lot of opportunities. But I think what I really want to say is that our audience needs to think about working for what I call an employer of choice. Owners and operators have to be committed to really developing a bench of talent. And as Babbie talks about those seasoned service directors and service engineers, they want to teach others, but we have to find talent that has a work ethic, that has curiosity. And I think also we're going to have to look at, convincing people that are working at the Marriotts, that are working at hotels and, resorts to come to work in multifamily. And I think owners and operators have to get very creative on salaries and comp and benefits. Because you think about an on-call service tech, um, people need apartments, people need housing. So I think we've got to offer employee discounts. We've got to offer ongoing training. We know the opportunity to learn and to grow is a driver of employee engagement. So I know we're running out of time, but we have to encourage owners and operators to partner too with our supplier partners, our Chadwell Supplies, our HD, our um, you know, um, maintenance supply companies are helping us too. So we've got to have a partnership.
Thank you for sharing. Segment 6 is staying motivated and industry wisdom. For Dr. Debbie, you're known as the motivator in this industry. What or who keeps you inspired when challenges arise?
Well, thank you for saying that. Babbie is my sister, my co-president in motivation, but I tell you what keeps me inspired is the opportunity to fire people up, get people excited. I mean, Jacob, Babbie and I couldn't get on this call fast enough. We're so proud of you. So growing leaders in this industry. It's really planting the seeds, lighting the fire of somebody that really wants to do meaningful work. So that's what keeps me motivated. And, when I'm challenged, I have to look back at, I've had more wins than losses. So I always say you got to look at your scoreboard and you got to think about, what are we playing for, right? Um, we get to work in the best industry on the planet because we provide housing. And housing is where your story can begin. And I want people to have a story worth telling. And that's what gets me excited. But there's a lot of challenges. We've talked about that today: regulation, increased operating expenses, lack of skilled talent. I mean, we could go on and on talking about the challenges, but the opportunity has never been brighter for people that are motivated in this industry.
Love that. Thank you for sharing. And for both of you, if someone is just starting in property management, what advice would you give them?
My advice would be that not to give up. There were times, I mean, it's so much to learn, and it takes time. It takes time to develop your skills, to practice. You have to practice your art, right? And not to give up. If you get discouraged, find somebody who can help you get through that problem of the day. It's probably a season, but it's worth it. Stick with it and don't give up.
Love it.
And my advice would be, spend time on the front line, develop your strengths, and create opportunities for you to be curious, and to stay curious. And also, Jacob, I love to give out these little believe and succeed cards. And I tell people all the time, you've got to drink from a can of belief. You've got to, for people to believe in you, you got to believe in yourself. And so I tell everybody, pay attention to what you're putting in your mind, pay attention to the people in your circle. You're the sum of your 5 friends. Show me your 5 closest friends and I'll show you your future. You got to choose carefully and be curious and spend time on the front line.
Love that. Yeah, I feel like the people who have given me genuine compliments, those compliments have stayed with me my whole life, and they've helped motivate me and keep me going. So it's an opportunity for each of us to make an impact in the lives of others, and an opportunity for us to invite those types of people into our lives too. Thank you so much to both of you for joining me today on the podcast. It's been wonderful for me to learn from both of you, and I hope it's helpful to our listeners as well.
Well,
Well, thank you.
congratulations. Congratulations on your podcast, and thank you for having us. It was a blast. It was a blast and so much fun to see Dr. Debbie again.